Hey, Sharon here again. I am presenting a case conceptualization of Shuhei, which is a movie character adopted from the Japanese movie The Mother, um, uh, or Mother. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly, so bear with me. So I wanted to kind of capture fully how a case conceptualization could look like that we use to inform treatment planning throughout treatment delivery for a client. So I chose this fiction character, although I did add in some fictional information. I made up some information um, to this fictional character. So it's a fiction of the fiction in order to have a more thorough case conceptualization to show you. Um, which now that I'm thinking of it, a lot of times we're not presented with all this information um, from the start and expected to still carry forward with therapy. Um, Arguably, I think we can try our best with what we can, solicit these questions early on throughout sessions as best we can. Um, and the challenge with Shuhei, which is not realistic, like I perhaps would not have been able to gain all this information if it wasn't for an omniscient kind of observer of the movie, because he is so timid. And you'll see a little bit later in the presentation that perhaps we would be challenged as counselors to gain all this information before we can kind of know uh, what treatment strategies are matched for him. But the idea with case conceptualization is that we do the best we can, and these are organic kind of documents we kind of update throughout. And the best approach I've learned throughout therapy is throughout uh, treating my clients is that it's best to be open for updating. Say 6 sessions down the road, we find out something new about the client, we can add into and update the conceptualization, or I misunderstood something. So some of the learning objectives here are describing what case conceptualization is in a little bit more detail than I just did. Um, we'll look at the client's presentation and the assessments that I would choose for him, his case conceptualization, some of the treatment, both the treatment approach and rationale, and the plan. And this is just based on my own thoughts, and there is no correct way to approach these assessments and the choices of assessments that I'd be using, the information I'd plot into the conceptualization and the rationale. They're all kind of um, biased by my own choice. So, in a way, it's kind of like an art that you see with conceptualization. And that's the kind of fun thing, but also um, if done not carefully, it could um, be so flexible that it might not be um, uh, helpful to the client. So it's good to have some structure in there. And then a good treatment plan should also think about the anticipated challenges and countertransferences. And especially in this case, I could imagine myself really experiencing into the countertransference for myself personally, just because of the sadness in this case. So, what is case conceptualization? And how I see it is kind of like it's how I would see a problem that the client comes into therapy for in any given moment of time, and how they created this problem, or how their upbringing had brought them to this problem that we have currently, and how I could help meet any gaps in solving these problems, or helping the client deal with these problems. Um, and so, like I mentioned, it's important that I've learned to have a balanced view of conceptualizing. Should I need to, as we develop through the course of treatment, sometimes we realize a strategy might not really work, or a treatment plan within the conceptualization. and needs a little bit of changing because the client, suddenly, something happened in their lives that they're no longer maybe receptive to, maybe let's say a humanistic approach, right? So it's important to be able to, as a counselor, be accommodating with that. And that's where the conceptualization could also be used to accommodate. And so I also find conceptualization is also a good tool for self-supervising. And it makes sure that I'm intentional throughout what I'm doing in therapy, that it's not just all just talk therapy and supporting and validating. There's a rhyme and reason to why we chose this strategy to work within this session before another strategy. So it's really like laying out a plan of action that narrows down the kind of success that the client and I hope to achieve in their treatment together. And so looking into Shuhei's presentation, he's a 17-year-old Japanese male who currently resides in Okinawa prison for double homicide, for murdering his parents about 5 months ago. And his trial was quite swift and immediate. He pled guilty. There had been some controversial speculation that his mother was the main culprit that dictated this murder. And so the mother is an interesting character to note. And Shuhei was primarily under her care since birth. While the father was kind of intermixed into the picture for mostly giving child support payment, but not really fully there for him. And so there's been extensive history with child welfare involvement, which did reveal at times Shuhei's mother's neglect for him as he was, but there was really nothing that really came out of that. As they moved around so much, it was hard for the welfare workers to track them. And Shuhei would always choose to stay with this mother, even given the opportunity. And the pair overall lived in a pretty impermanent lifestyle in rental homes, on the street life, and it resulted in Shuhei, not really being able to stay in one particular school and curriculum at a given point. So he never really had a complete, full, basic education in Japan. And despite Shuhei's mother's improvidence for future planning, she remained jobless and kind of reckless, spending a lot of the survival money and the money that she would get from maternal grandparents or Shuhei's father for child support payment, would all be kind of spent on her gambling and partying habits. She wasn't able to hold her job because of her, you kind of can see kind of her personality and kind of some of the problems she had. And so some critical instances are that Shuhei, when he was 5, his mother partying kind of meant leaving him alone for days on ends without food, and Shuhei had to learn how to survive during that time at such a young age. So lucky he was able to kind of manage that. And here we see kind of as young as he was, he developed skills and strengths of resilience and survival skills at that age. And so Shuhei's frequent, unsupervision kind of continued on, and eventually the mom became pregnant and had Shuhei's little sister not long after, and Shuhei essentially took on primary caregiver responsibilities for the sister since the mom was so, off and on leaving them to party and being with other men. And then there was another time that Shuhei witnessed his mother and boyfriend accidentally stab a government worker as a ploy to blackmail him for money. And so yeah, that was something to witness, a traumatic incident to witness. And finally, what brings him into prison today is that when he was 16, not long ago, he murdered his grandparents, like I've mentioned, and at his mother's discretion, um, and which he kind of selectively remembers the details of. And so overall, Shuhei was chronically exposed to his mom's um, uh, like instructions and guided by instructions to exploit others, and seeing her sexual promiscuity at his young age, and intimate partner violence. Mom would be beat by these men, and him himself being beat in the process of protecting his mom from these men, and also exposed to her ambivalent, hostile parenting style and borderline tendencies. And despite all this, he's still stuck around her, and that's all he kind of knew. Overall, Shuhei presents as timid. He lacks like affect at baseline, and shows little interest in connecting with others in this juvenile life skills program at the prison that he's in right now, which he's due to transition into adult prison soon. Um, and here, Shuhei had learned, he does learn well independently, and he has been excelling in this writing program. But like recently, with Shuhui's assignment into adult prison, he kind of just dropped out, and his writing kind of reflected past actions for future growth, and opened up even vivid nightmares he had been experiencing in detailing his grandparents' brutal murder. Trying to use neutral words here. So Shuhei shows remorse, and despite that, he still dropped out of that program. And his cellmate does report that Shuhei is often unresponsive lately, and does wake up in a panic and sometimes asks where he is. So as a therapist, I'm called upon to assist Shuhei to help him into adult prison and adjust that way. But clearly, he lacks some developmental and cognitive readiness to handle adult prison. So part of this treatment is to be aware of that as well.